Imagine, you've just spent 6 months saving up for this quintessential tropical escape, right?
The absolute dream vacation.
Exactly. You've studied the glossy photos, you've memorized the itineraries, and you are finally here.
But the landing is a little rougher than expected,
Well,
yeah.
rough is an understatement. The reality is, you're currently dragging a 15-kilo hard-shell suitcase through, like, knee-deep ocean water.
Oh, the worst.
Yeah, and you're sweating completely through your clothes. You finally reach your room, which, by the way, is costing you $150 a night,
Right.
only to discover you're sitting in a 35 degrees Celsius pitch-black concrete box because you guessed it. The entire island's power grid just collapsed. Again.
It really is the ultimate collision of digital fantasy and physical reality, isn't it?
Cool.
You know, you arrive expecting this seamless transaction of capital for relaxation, but instead you're just immediately thrust into a localized infrastructure crisis.
And that is exactly what we're dismantling today. Welcome to the deep dive. We are turning our focus to the Perhention Islands in Malaysia.
A fascinating case study right now.
It really is. So if you're planning a trip there, or even if you're just, fascinated by the underlying economics of modern travel.
And the collapse of that whole budget backpacker paradise myth.
Yes, exactly. If that interests you, you need to listen very closely to this one. We have a massive stack of sources to go through today.
We're talking a highly detailed cache of 2026 ground reports.
Brutally honest logistical data, hidden cost breakdowns, and some very sobering environmental assessments. Our mission today is basically to act as your financial and experiential bodyguard.
Because if you look at the source material, the dominant theme is that the digital footprint of this place, the collective consciousness of what the Perhenchins are supposed to be,
Right.
it's frozen in time. The gap between that marketed illusion and the actual 2026 ground reality is practically a chasm at this point.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Reading 2019 travel blogs for this destination, it's like using a map from the 1800s to navigate modern-day New York City.
That is a great analogy.
Thanks. I mean, it's not just that the map is a little unhelpful. It is actively dangerous to your wallet and, honestly, your sanity.
Absolutely, because you're going to be making these crucial logistical decisions based on landmarks and pricing structures that simply do not exist anymore.
The map is broken.
Fundamentally broken. And to understand why, we first have to look at the massive structural failure hidden right beneath that famous white sand.
Because the core contradiction here is just staggering. The islands are still being relentlessly marketed across social media algorithms as this, $20 a day backpacker sanctuary.
Oh, yeah, we all know the visual language.
Right. The string lights strung between palm trees, the cheap local beers, travelers just discovering themselves on a shoestring budget.
But the 2026 reality we extracted from our ground reports paints a completely different picture.
100%. You are walking into a zone of entirely unmanaged infrastructure. You're paying a premium, like I said, $150 a night in some cases.
And what are you getting for that?
You're getting to swim 20 meters away from raw greywater runoff, dumping directly onto Long Beach.
Let's actually talk about that greywater for a second, because it really points to the broader macroeconomic split that's driving this entire situation.
Yeah, break that down for us. What exactly is greywater in this context?
So greywater isn't just a muddy puddle. It's the untreated wastewater from sinks, showers, and kitchen drainage.
Gross.
Yeah. And when you have this massive influx of tourists, the volume of that water just skyrockets. But the underlying plumbing of the island, it hasn't changed at all.
So gravity just does its thing.
Exactly. Gravity pulls that untreated runoff straight down the slope and right into the bay where people are paying a premium to swim.
Wow.
This isn't just a case of a few bad pipes. It is a systemic structural failure.
I want to look at the power grid trap, specifically on Perhention Castle. That's the smaller, historically more youth-oriented island, right?
Correct. The party island, essentially.
Right. The sources highlight that the infrastructure physically cannot handle the 2026 tourist load. But I want to understand the mechanics of that. I mean, why does a power grid on a tropical island just fail every single day?
Well, you have to look at the physical realities of island electrification. There's no massive undersea cable connecting Perhention Castle to the robust mainland power grid.
Oh, so they're completely off-grid.
Entirely. Every single electron generated on that island comes from a localized diesel generator.
Which means every watt of electricity has to be imported via boat. in liquid form.
Precisely. Now look at what happened between 2019 and 2026. The island went on this massive, totally unregulated building spree.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Yeah. The original charm of the island was built on these beautiful, breathable, traditional wooden chalets. They were actually designed for natural cross-ventilation.
Right, they worked with the climate, not against it.
Exactly. But what replaced them? Concrete blocks. High price, low quality concrete rooms.
And concrete is terrible for that kind of heat.
It has an incredibly high thermal mass. It just absorbs the midday tropical sun and traps all that heat inside the structure.
So it's basically an oven.
Pretty much.
Huh.
So to make a concrete box habitable in 35-degree weather, you need a heavy-duty air conditioning unit running on maximum output.
And then you multiply that by, what, 500 new rooms?
The math is catastrophic. The base load of the generators might handle the refrigerators and the lights in the morning, but the moment you hit 2 p.m.
Let me guess. Everyone comes back from the beach and hits their AC remotes at the exact same time.
Bingo. That spike in peak demand literally overwhelms the alternators.
So the generators trip their own safety switches just to protect themselves from catching fire, and boom, the entire grid collapses.
You get daily rolling blackouts specifically hitting between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m.
So imagine you've paid that premium price. You're seeking that midday retreat to your air-conditioned room, and what you're actually doing is sitting in a 35-degree Celsius sweatbox.
Just listening to the silence of a dead AC unit, the grid hasn't scaled with the room rates.
Wait, I really need to push back on this concept of upgrading. Because if they're building all these concrete blocks and charging $150 a night, where is that money actually going?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. If room rates are skyrocketing, why hasn't the power grid or the municipal infrastructure scaled with the accommodation build-out? You'd think the profit margins would naturally fund better generators.
That is the logical assumption, sure, but it completely ignores how rapid gentrification operates in isolated environments. The money is going toward immediate short-term room rate profits.
Economists refer to this model as extractive tourism, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you're saying the economic model is closer to, like, a mining town than a hospitality hub? They're treating the geographic isolation and the pristine nature like a finite vein of coal.
That is a brilliant analogy, yes. In a healthy hospitality ecosystem, a percentage of profits is naturally reinvested into the municipal bones, sewage treatment, trash incineration, reliable utilities.
The boring stuff that makes a place run.
Right. But here, the pristine nature is the asset, and developers are drawing down on that asset without maintaining the machinery that supports it.
Because public utilities are invisible long-term investments.
Exactly. If you're operating on a model of maximum capital extraction, you don't care about a 20-year municipal plan. You care about how many beds you can fill this weekend.
And then the capital largely flees the island back to the mainland, or to corporate developers, leaving the local infrastructure totally starved of reinvestment.
So you're paying Maldives prices for a backpacker-level municipal delivery.
Which is wild. And what our sources make incredibly clear is that this feeling of structural friction, this massive disconnect, it doesn't just start when you try to turn on the AC and the power is dead.
Oh, no, not at all.
It literally hits you the moment you arrive at the jetty on the mainland.
The arrival vector. It's heavily detailed in our ground reports, and it essentially sets the tone for the entire psychological arc of the trip.
Walk us through it. Every single visitor starts at the Kuala Besut jetty on the mainland, and the sensory shock is immediate.
The sources paint this very vivid picture. You step out of your taxi, and you are instantly hit with the heavy, thick smell of diesel fuel and frying snacks.
And you're already sweating nervously in the humidity.
Right. And before you even catch a glimpse of the ocean, you take an immediate financial hit.
Yes, the Marine Park Conservation Fee.
30 ringgit, about $6.30 US, just to exist in the waiting area.
To put that localized purchasing power in perspective, our sources note that 30 ringgit is the equivalent of 3 full hot plates of local food on the mainland.
Just vaporized before you even step on a boat.
And the tragedy, going back to our discussion on extractive tourism, is that visitors look around at the failing infrastructure later and wonder, well, exactly what conservation efforts is that fee actually funding?
It's a valid question. And then comes the boat ride itself.
Oh boy. This is not a leisurely luxury catamaran cruise holding a martini, is it?
Not even close. You pay 70 ringgit, roughly $15, for a 45-minute speedboat ride across the South China Sea.
And the reports detail that the pilots treat this crossing like an offshore motocross track.
That's a very accurate description?
I really want to highlight a very specific, brutal physical reality mentioned in the sources. If you sit in the front of that fiberglass boat, you absorb every single wave impact directly into your spine.
It's pure hydrodynamics. A small fiberglass hull hitting ocean swells at high speed creates massive vertical deceleration forces.
Ouch.
Yeah. The pivot point of the boat is near the rear, where the heavy outboard motors are, so the bow, the front, launches into the air and slams down onto the water surface.
And if you're sitting up there, your spinal column becomes the primary shock absorber for that multi-ton impact.
Exactly. The sources note you don't even realize your mistake until you're wincing in pain 10 minutes into the crossing. But by then, you are trapped.
You're wedged in with worn, sweaty life jackets, while the pilot at the back, who is experiencing a much smoother ride, is casually finishing a cigarette.
It's a physical toll that leaves you exhausted before you even arrive. And that physical toll is immediately followed by a profound logistical trap.
Because those large twin-engine speedboats can't actually reach the sand at most of the beaches, right?
Right, due to the shallow coral reefs and the dramatic tidal shifts, the draft of the boat, how deep it sits in the water, is too deep to clear the reef at low tide.
So where do they drop you?
The speedboat drops you at a floating pontoon moored a few hundred meters offshore.
And there you are hit with a surprise, mandatory water taxi transfer.
An extra 50 ringgit, or 10.50 US, just to get from the pontoon to the sand in a smaller, flat-bottomed boat.
Which is a charge that is conspicuously absent from almost every booking confirmation or glossy brochure. It's a total ambush fee.
It is. And it leads directly into what the ground reports playfully but accurately call the rookie luggage error.
This is my absolute favorite detail because it perfectly encapsulates the death of the 2019 travel map.
It really does.
Because there are zero concrete pathways, zero jetties extending onto the sand at these beaches. The moment you step off that small water taxi, you are stepping directly into knee-deep tide.
So if you brought a 15-kilogram wheeled hardshell suitcase, the kind you use at a standard airport hotel, you are in for a nightmare.
Wheeled luggage is fundamentally non-functional in this environment. The wheels instantly sink into the wet sand.
It's like dragging an anchor.
Literally. You are forced to physically drag this plastic anchor through the water and up the steep berm of the beach, sweating completely through your travel clothes.
While the local water taxi drivers sit in the shade of the palm trees and just watch you struggle.
It is a highly visible public marker of someone who relied on an outdated map.
It really highlights a kind of sensory gaslighting that occurs upon arrival.
Sensory gaslighting, that is the perfect way to phrase it.
Think about it.
Yeah, because you have this visual promise in front of you. The aquamarine water, the leaning palm trees. But the dominant sound is the relentless, high-pitched whine of two-stroke Yamaha outboard motors tearing up and down the bay.
And the smell isn't just sea breeze. It's coconut oil mixed with the distinct acrid scent of burning plastic.
Right, and that burning plastic smell is a direct symptom of the municipal failure we discussed.
Exactly. Without a robust system to barge municipal waste back to the mainland, local businesses often resort to illegal trash incineration in the jungle behind the resorts.
You are literally breathing in the logistical failure of the island.
And our sources actually map out how travelers process all this. They break down the fascinating emotional timeline of a new arrival.
Oh, I love this part. If you chart the first 24 hours, the psychological arc is incredibly predictable. It starts with hours 1 to 3, which are characterized by pure euphoria.
Yes, the visual promise is initially fulfilled. You arrive, you see that impossible water clarity, the dense green canopy of the jungle. You feel like you've won the travel lottery.
The fatigue of the boat ride kind of washes away in the sheer beauty of the landscape.
The Instagram reel comes to life, but as the afternoon wears on, you enter hours 4 to 8, and the logistical friction sets in.
This is when the reality of the environment asserts itself. You're sweating profusely because the power grid just failed and your AC is dead.
You step out to find food and realize the pathways between resorts are just jagged rocks and exposed tree roots.
And you're trying to find an edible lunch that isn't just overpriced fries from a resort snack bar.
Yeah.
And you're realizing how constrained your movements really are.
Which naturally bleeds into hours 9 to 14. The financial shock.
Oh man, the financial shock. The sun goes down, you sit down for dinner expecting those famous Southeast Asian backpacker prices.
And you are handed an 80 ringgit $17 bill for a plate of mediocre imported frozen seafood.
That moment completely recalibrates your entire budget expectation for the trip. It's a very hard landing.
It forces a reckoning. But the arc does resolve. Hours 15 to 24 bring acceptance.
You wake up at dawn, before the heat sets in, you jump into that incredibly warm ocean water, you accept that the prices are inflated, and you finally adjust your internal clock to island time.
You basically surrender to the baseline chaos.
You essentially decide, well, I'm here, I might as well make the best of it. But here is where the sources issue a massive warning.
A critical warning.
Once you accept this chaotic baseline and survive day one, you still have to navigate 3 specific trip-altering logistical traps. If you aren't prepared for these, they will fundamentally ruin your vacation.
These are not minor inconveniences. They are structural traps built into the island's economy. The first one is what the ground reports refer to as the cash desert.
Right, because in 2026, the global assumption is that digital payment is ubiquitous. You assume you can just tap your phone or use your smartwatch everywhere, from a London tube station to a beach bar in Thailand.
But on the Perhention Islands, wrong.
Completely wrong. There are practically 0 functioning ATMs on either of the main islands. And while some high-end resorts have credit card machines, those machines rely on point-of-sale systems connected to cellular data networks.
And those cellular networks are extraordinarily fragile. The sources paint a very vivid, painful picture of how this plays out in reality.
I can only imagine.
The cellular signal completely fails the second a heavy rain cloud passes over, or, when the island's power grid drops and takes the local cell towers offline with it.
So the lived reality is agonizing. Imagine you are gearing up for a 7 a.m. scuba dive. You have your wetsuit half on, your mask is defogged, you're excited.
Ready to go.
You walk up to the dive counter to pay your remaining balance, and the dive master holds out the card machine. It says, no signal.
The boat is idling at the shoreline, leaving in 5 minutes.
You have no hard cash in your wallet.
Yeah.
The dive master just shakes his head, apologizes, and tells you to take off your wetsuit. You are grounded.
Grounded on a perfect weather day with crystal clear visibility purely because of a banking logistics failure.
And the penalty for completely running out of cash is severe.
It's essentially a ransom. If you need cash to pay for your hotel checkout, and the network is down for 2 days, you have to hire an emergency round-trip speedboat back to the mainland solely to use a functioning ATM.
And that emergency run cost 250 ringgit, $53.
That is 3 days of a backpacker's food budget vaporized in an instant because some outdated 2019 blog promised cards accepted everywhere.
Which is why the actionable fix here is absolute and non-negotiable. You must act as your own central bank.
You need to bring a minimum of 1,500 ringgit, around $315 in hard cash from the mainland.
You withdraw it in Kuala Lumpur or Kota Baru before you even get in the taxi to the jetty. Treat your credit card as a fragile emergency backup, not a primary payment method.
Okay, that brings us to the second massive trap, the water taxi extortion.
We established earlier that there were 0 roads on these islands. No cars, no scooters. You are 100% reliant on boat operators to get from one beach to another, or from your resort to the main dining areas.
During the daylight hours, there is a semblance of order. There's a fixed pricing board at the main beaches.
A standard beach hop is 15 ringgit. It's expensive for Southeast Asia, but it's predictable.
But the moment the sun sets, the physics and the economics of the island completely change. That fixed pricing board ceases to exist.
And what emerges is essentially a cartel of boat operators who control all nocturnal movement.
I want to dig into that word, cartel. How does a cartel operate in this microeconomy? Why wouldn't a rogue boat driver just undercut the cartel prices by 5 ringgit to get all the business?
Well, it's a fascinating study in the microeconomics of isolated monopolies. You have to remember the social dynamics at play here.
They all know each other. Exactly. These boatmen all live in the same village, drink coffee at the same stalls, and share the same limited mooring spaces. If one driver breaks the unwritten nocturnal price floor, he faces immediate social and professional ostracization.
Plus, navigating those coral reefs in pitch darkness is genuinely hazardous, right?
Very much so. It requires high skill and localized knowledge to avoid tearing the hull open on a coral head. They are pricing in the risk of darkness, the cost of fuel, and crucially, the absolute lack of alternatives.
And they know exactly how much leverage they have over you. That exact same 15 ringgit daytime route suddenly jumps to 40 or 50 ringgit the moment it gets dark.
And this isn't just about losing 10 bucks, it's about the psychological resentment it breeds.
Exactly. Picture the scenario outlined in the reports. It's 10 p.m.
Yeah.
You had a fantastic, relaxing dinner on Long Beach, but your hotel is on the other side of the island at Coral Bay.
The interior jungle path connecting the two is pitch black. There is no municipal lighting.
And that path is not a paved sidewalk. There are tripping hazards from exposed, slick tree roots.
And the sources specifically mention it is full of massive, noisy monitor lizards, some growing up to 2 meters long, thrashing around in the underbrush right next to your ankles.
It's terrifying. So you walk up to the boat driver. He looks at you, he looks at your flip-flops, and he knows you have absolutely zero leverage.
He knows you are not walking through that jungle in the dark.
So the money transfers under duress. And as the source notes, that forced premium, that feeling of being extorted, completely erases the good mood of your evening.
You walk into your room feeling like a hostage on the beach.
The fix for this trap requires foresight. You have to remove the ambiguity before the sun goes down.
You pre-negotiate and prepay for your return trip with the exact same driver who dropped you off during daylight.
You get his WhatsApp number, you agree on the exact pickup time at the exact pier, and you lock in the price while you still have the leverage of daylight.
Precisely. Which leads to the third structural trap, and this one relies on the legal architecture of online booking platforms, the fake sea view.
Oh, this is so sneaky. This deception is specifically rampant on the larger island, Perhention Islands.
We mentioned the unregulated building spree earlier. Resorts are rapidly squeezing new concrete chalets into every single available square meter of land they lease, building further and further back from the actual beach.
But they are listing these back row rooms on major booking platforms as sea view and charging a massive premium for them.
Now, you might ask how they circumvent the false advertising policies of these multinational booking platforms. The answer lies in the legal definition of a partial view.
It's all in the fine print.
Yep. The platforms require photographic evidence, but they don't dictate the framing. So technically, if you stand on the toilet in the bathroom of a back row chalet and you look through a very specific gap in the palm trees,
A tiny geometric sliver of blue water is visible.
right. And legally, under the platform's loose definitions, that qualifies the room to be marketed with a sea view tag.
And travelers are paying 150 ringgit premium per night for that manipulative tag. Imagine the emotional weight of that deception.
It's crushing.
You save up for half a year, you endure the spinal impacts of the speedboat, you drag your heavy luggage through the tide, you walk into your room, open the curtains expecting this grand cinematic ocean reveal.
And your immediate sightline is a rusty, vibrating diesel generator and the kitchen staff taking a smoke break next to a pile of garbage bags.
It immediately casts a shadow over the first 2 days of your trip. The feeling of being actively deceived is potent, and the front desk staff are entirely desensitized to the complaints because they have the booking platform's loophole protecting them.
So how do you defeat this? The sources have a brilliant modern solution. You have to engage in geographical sleuthing.
You absolutely cannot trust the platform photos because they are heavily cropped and utilize forced perspective.
You open Google Earth Satellite View, you search the specific resort, you switch to 3D mode if possible, and you look at the physical top-down layout of the property.
If you see 3 rows of distinct roofs between the front row and the water, you pause.
You do not click book. Instead, you email the property directly with a screenshot of their layout, and you demand written, unambiguous confirmation that the room you are being assigned is in row 1 directly on the sand.
Before you pay a single dollar of deposit, if they refuse to confirm, you walk away.
Verify the satellite data. I love that.
So because navigating at night is so difficult and expensive, you end up spending a massive amount of time trapped at your chosen resort or beach, which means choosing the right island base is the single most critical decision of the trip.
And our sources highlight a stark, profound division between the two main islands. They are splitting into two extreme economic and atmospheric realities.
It literally is a tale of 2 islands. Let's start by mapping out Perhention Kessel, the smaller island.
This is the historical backpacker and party epicenter, with development intensely clustered around Long Beach and Coral Bay.
The physical character of Kessel is dense, chaotic, and heavily developed right up to the tide line. During peak season, Long Beach reaches absolute overcapacity.
By 11 a.m., the sand is entirely consumed by day trippers from the mainland, endless rows of rented umbrellas, and the overlapping, chaotic acoustics of competing beach bars blasting different bass tracks at the same time.
It sounds exhausting. Let's break down the economics of staying on Kessel. If you are on a strict budget, a basic fan-only dorm bed, often with a shared cold water bathroom, will run you 80 ringgits, or about $17 a night.
If you upgrade to a mid-range, older, air-conditioned chalet, you are looking at 250 ringgit.
But there are also high-end options trying to capitalize on the luxury market, like Boo Boo Resort, where a room can hit 600 ringgit $127 a night.
And the ground reports have a massive, glaring warning about that 600 ringgit room. You are paying the equivalent of a high-end luxury apartment in Kuala Lumpur purely for beachfront proximity.
But those rooms are often built with thin, single-pane glass or wooden slats.
Which means they offer zero acoustic insulation.
Exactly. So you pay top dollar for a relaxing retreat, but your room literally vibrates until 3 a.m. from the fire show bass tracks thumping outside on the beach.
You are paying a heavy premium to endure sleep deprivation.
Contrast that chaotic energy with Perhention Bazaar, the larger western island. This island has pivoted its marketing entirely toward families, older couples, and larger budgets.
The physical layout is different. It has a significantly quieter vibe, larger resort footprints, and actual physical setbacks from the ocean in some places.
The costs on Bazaar reflect that pivot. You can find older budget rooms for 150 ringgit, but the prices rapidly scale up to over 1,300 ringgit, almost 300 bucks a night, for top-tier family properties like the Marriott.
But, and this is where nature balances the scales, there is a great equalizer on Bazaar, something that completely ignores your tax bracket.
Oh no, what if it?
The sandflies.
The sandflies. Our sources dedicate entire paragraphs to these insects. They are vicious, specifically at dusk, and they show absolutely zero regard for the room rate you paid.
It's important to understand the biology here. Sandflies are not like mosquitoes.
How so?
A mosquito uses a needle-like appendage to pierce the skin. A sandfly essentially bites a small hole in the skin to create a hemorrhagic pool and feeds from that.
That is horrifying.
It is. The resulting bite is incredibly itchy, often swells significantly, and takes weeks to heal. And because they breed in the slightly damp sand near the high tide line, they are ubiquitous on the wider beaches of Bazaar.
Whether you are sipping champagne on a private luxury veranda at the Marriott or sitting on the stoop of a budget chalet, you are getting bitten equally the moment the sun dips.
It's a humbling reminder that nature doesn't care about your VIP status.
Very true. But beyond the accommodation and the insects, there is a massive economic divide in the food systems across these islands. It operates on a strict two-tier system,
Yes.
heavily dependent on supply chain logistics.
I want to look at the food data because the pricing disparity here makes absolutely zero sense until you look at how the food gets to the plate.
Track 1 is the beachfront tourist trap. Picture this. You're sitting directly on the sand under fairy lights, listening to a local guy do an acoustic guitar cover of Wonderwall.
We've all been there.
You order a plate of nasi goreng Malaysian fried rice, and it costs you 35 ringgit on Long Beach. What you are eating often relies on an imported, frozen supply chain.
The shrimp in that rice were likely frozen on the mainland, barged over, and kept in a freezer running on those failing diesel generators. High price, low culinary provenance.
Now look at track 2, the village canteen, tucked inside the interior fisherman's village on Kessel.
You're sitting on plastic stools under harsh fluorescent tubes. You are eating exactly what the local boat drivers and dive masters are eating.
That exact same nasi goreng, cooked with identical if not fresher ingredients, is 15 ringgit.
Less than half the price. A fresh chopped coconut at the village is 10 ringgit. A banana pancake, which the sources specifically highlight as the absolute best value calorie hit on the entire island for backpackers, is 8 ringgit.
So the massive price differential is entirely about location, fairy lights, and the acoustic guitar.
If you want the absolute pinnacle of value and authenticity, the sources pinpoint a very specific culinary hack. A small, family-run BBQ stand near Coral Bay that sets up around 7 p.m.
Oh, this sounds amazing.
For 40 ringgit, just over 8 bucks, you get a whole line-caught fish pulled from the local waters that day, grilled right in front of you over coconut husks, and served on a simple paper plate with a squeeze of fresh lime and a fiery homemade sambal sauce.
It is universally cited as the best meal on the island.
But getting to that authentic food requires moving through the local community spaces, which brings up a crucial point about cultural etiquette. You cannot treat the entire island like a giant beach club.
This is a vital point of friction. Malaysia is a Muslim country, and the local fisherman's village on Kessel, where that affordable food and the mini-marts are located, observes strict Islamic norms.
The alcohol consumption, the loud music, and the swimwear are tolerated by the locals within the highly defined designated tourist zones on the beaches.
But the moment you leave the sand and walk onto the concrete path of the main village, the rules change. Walking through that village in a bikini or board shorts is considered a significant, aggressive act of disrespect.
You are walking past the local mosque and the primary school. You have to throw on a t-shirt or sarong. It's basic travel respect, but the sources know it is constantly ignored by oblivious crowds, causing quiet but deep resentment.
And while you are in that village, you will quickly notice the reality of island groceries. There are no massive air-conditioned chain supermarkets, no 7-Elevens.
Everything comes from independent village mini-marts, and the logistics of island supply chains dictate the prices.
A six-pack of large bottled water is heavily marked up to 18 ringgit. And remember, you are a captive market because drinking the tap water is a guaranteed path to severe gastrointestinal illness.
The tap water is functionally unsafe. Furthermore, these mini-marts operate on a strictly cash economy. If you didn't heed the warning about the cash desert earlier, you won't even be able to buy water.
So, synthesizing all this data, we arrive at a very real tension regarding where a traveler should actually base themselves.
Yeah, based on the sources, I have a dilemma for you. If Bazaar is a sanitized, expensive, older demographic enclave where you still get eaten alive by sandflies,
Basal is a vibrating, chaotic party zone with failing power grids and raw greywater runoff.
are we essentially just picking our poison here? What is the actual sweet spot for someone listening to this?
It's a profound question, and the sweet spot requires a highly strategic approach based on lead time. For Bazaar, the only way to win is to absolutely mandate booking 6 months in advance.
If you secure a frontline premium property early, you bypass the traps. The resort's private backup generators actually work, the plumbing is maintained, you have a verified sea view, and you can sleep in silence.
If you try to book Bazaar late, you are left with the physical leftovers, the hot, loud back row concrete blocks.
And what about Kessel?
Kessel, despite its massive, glaring flaws, still holds the soul of the true diving community. It has a raw, kinetic energy. It's where the real, unscripted conversations happen at the village canteens.
It is the better choice, provided you know exactly how to manage your daily budget, pre-negotiate your water taxis, and radically lower your expectations for infrastructure.
Right. But here's the ultimate twist in the data. Choosing the right island, the right room, and the right food doesn't matter at all if you choose the wrong month to visit.
And this is where the climate truths come in. The weather here isn't just a minor factor that determines if you get a tan. It dictates the entire physical survival of the destination.
The northeast monsoon is not a suggestion. It is a violent atmospheric shutdown of the region.
Let's talk about the oceanography and meteorology of that monsoon. From November to late February, the prevailing winds shift, blowing powerfully across the vast fetch of the South China Sea.
This generates massive, dangerous swells and dumps, over 600 millimeters of rain per month onto these tiny islands. The ocean becomes completely unnavigable for small craft.
Because of those physics, the Malaysian government officially and legally shuts down the commercial ferry routes. The island essentially board up their windows, pull the boats out of the water, and cease to exist as a tourist destination.
The practical reality of trying to defy the monsoon is wild. The sources state that if you are stubborn and you somehow bribe a local fisherman to make that highly dangerous illegal crossing in December, you will arrive at a ghost town.
You will be sitting in a damp, leaking concrete room eating instant noodles you brought from the mainland because absolutely nothing is open. No restaurants, no dive shops, no clinics.
And conversely, the peak season, July and August, brings its own systemic localized failures. During those 2 months, the islands hit 100% crowd density.
Accommodation prices spike by an average of 40% across the board due to algorithmic surge pricing. But the hidden catastrophic failure of peak season is the water pressure.
Oh, this is a nightmare scenario detailed in the reports. Let's look at the fluid dynamics of island plumbing. Most resorts use gravity-fed water tanks situated on the hillsides behind the rooms.
They pump water up to the tanks, and gravity provides the pressure to the showers below. But during peak season, every single room is occupied.
The replenishment rate of the water pumps simply cannot keep up with the simultaneous draw of hundreds of tourists.
So the localized water tanks physically empty out by late afternoon.
You pay peak, surged prices. You go out for a stunning, exhausting saltwater dive. You hike back to your room sweating profusely. At 6 p.m., you step into the shower to wash off the salt and the sunscreen. You turn the tap.
And nothing comes out. Zero pressure. Just a dry hiss of air. You are trapped in a crust of salt until the tanks refill hours later.
So if the monsoon is closed and peak season is an overcrowded, waterless trap, when do you actually go? This raises the critical importance of what our sources call the secret seasons.
The golden windows. March and September. These are the transitional shoulder seasons. The economics completely shift.
Room rates drop by 30% compared to peak season because European school holidays are over. The crowd density is cut in half, meaning the water tanks and the power grids actually function normally.
And environmentally, September specifically is noted as a peak experience. The atmospheric conditions settle, the water becomes remarkably glassy, the visibility for diving hits its annual peak.
The beach bar owners actually have the time and energy to sit down and have a genuine conversation with you. You can snorkel in the shallow bays at dusk without fighting a relentless gauntlet of speedboat traffic.
But while we are talking about the water and snorkeling, we absolutely need to address the safety and health realities, because the risks here are completely misaligned with what tourists assume they are.
People hear tropical island, and their minds immediately jump to apex predators.
Yeah.
Sharks, venomous jellyfish, things of that nature.
Right, the Jaws reflex. But the number one physical risk on the Perhention Islands, it's boat propeller strikes.
It's a tragic consequence of the unregulated water taxi system we discussed earlier. The boat vectors completely overlap with the active snorkeling zones.
The drivers are incentivized to move as fast as possible to maximize their daily runs. Getting clipped by a spinning Yamaha outboard motor while you are floating face down looking at coral is the statistically highest physical threat in the water.
And if that mechanical strike happens, you're in incredibly serious trouble because the medical infrastructure is non-existent.
There are no hospitals on either island. There is one tiny government-run village clinic on Kessel that is equipped to hand out basic antibiotics, treat a minor sunburn, or bandage a scrape from a piece of coral. That is the absolute limit of their capability.
For a genuine medical emergency, a compound fracture, decompression sickness from a deep scuba dive, or a laceration from a propeller, you require immediate high-level trauma care.
Which means you have to charter an emergency speedboat back to the mainland hospital. That medical evacuation costs a flat 500 ringgit.
Which makes comprehensive travel insurance an absolute fundamental requirement. And you have to read the fine print. It must specifically cover emergency boat evacuation. It is not an optional add-on. It is a prerequisite for stepping on the ferry.
You also have to manage endemic health risks, specifically dengue fever. Dengue is transmitted by the Aedes mosquito, which is highly active during the day, particularly at dawn and dusk. This requires applying DEET-based repellent religiously.
But, and here's the environmental friction. While you are slathering yourself in chemicals to protect against mosquitoes, you have to be hyper-aware of what you put on your skin before entering the ocean. You must use certified reef-safe sunscreen.
The biological mechanism here is critical to understand. Conventional sunscreens contain chemicals like oxybenzone. When that washes off your skin into the water, it acts as an endocrine disruptor for the coral.
It literally alters the coral's DNA, makes them susceptible to viral infections, and causes them to expel the symbiotic algae they need to survive, leading to fatal bleaching.
And I want to bring something up that really struck me in the environmental assessments of these reports. The immediate shoreline reefs, the ones that look so perfect and vibrant on the drone footage used in the marketing, are largely dead.
They have been decimated by a combination of that oxybenzone sunscreen contamination, warming ocean temperatures, and decades of physical damage from mass volume tourist traffic kicking the fragile coral with heavy plastic fins. We are literally loving this localized ecosystem to death.
It's a tragic reality of mass tourism.
But if the main draw, the accessible, pristine reef, is dead or dying, how do you actually experience the nature here? Why even go?
Because the marine life that built the island's reputation still exists, but the access model has fundamentally changed. You can no longer just step off the beach with a $5 snorkel mask and see a thriving, untouched ecosystem.
You must now deploy capital. You must pay for a boat charter to take you away from the islands, out to the deep drop-off zones where the water currents constantly flush the environment and the depth protects the coral from fin kicks.
Which perfectly transitions into how you actually salvage this trip. How do you bypass the herds, avoid the traps, and find the authentic versions of the island's best moments? Because the expectation versus reality gap here is massive, and it requires active management.
Let's look at Turtle Point as the prime example of this gap.
The marketing hype for Turtle Point promises a deeply serene spiritual experience, swimming silently alongside ancient sea turtles in perfect privacy, gliding through crystal clear water.
The honest logistical reality of Turtle Point. It's 11 a.m. in the middle of peak season. There are 20 fiberglass boats idling in a tight circle, pumping noxious diesel exhaust directly into the humid air.
In the water, there are 50 tourists wearing bright orange, highly buoyant life jackets, physically kicking each other in the face, completely ignoring spatial awareness, all desperately chasing one single, incredibly stressed-out turtle that has been forced to endure this miserable, chaotic circuit for years. It is an environmental circus.
But the sources provide the authentic hack, the way to actually achieve the experience you traveled halfway around the world for. And it relies entirely on timing and capital. You bypass the group tours entirely.
You wake up early and you charter a private boat at 7:30 a.m. while the mass market tourists are still sleeping off their hangovers.
You pay 150 ringgit premium to the driver to take you away from the main islands entirely, out to the smaller, uninhabited raw island outcrop nearby. You roll backward off the boat into completely silent, deep, crystal-clear water.
And instead of fighting a crowd for a glimpse of a stressed turtle, you have sleek, black-tip reef sharks cruising the coral drop-off, and you have the entire ocean to yourself for a full, uninterrupted hour.
The magic of the Perhentions absolutely still exists. It just costs slightly more and requires the discipline to set your alarm clock.
Another huge expectation gap we need to address is the jungle trek. The brochure sells this as a leisurely, romantic nature walk between Long Beach and Coral Bay, a chance to commune with the tropical flora.
The physical reality is a severe endurance event. You are attempting a steep scramble over exposed slippery tree roots and dangerously exposed broken power cables. And you're doing this in 33-degree heat with 90% humidity.
I want to touch on the wet bulb effect here, because humidity drastically changes how the human body thermoregulates. In that jungle, your sweat cannot evaporate into the already saturated air.
So you don't cool down, you just overheat rapidly while massive monitor lizards thrash in the underbrush right next to your ankles. It is suffocating.
The authentic hack for the jungle, according to the Grown reports, is to abandon the interior crossing entirely. Instead, you take the longer, elevated, uncaved path up to the windmill viewpoint at the highest peak of the island. It requires proper closed-toe shoes and intense physical exertion, but it costs nothing.
The payoff is sensory salvation. You break through the dense, suffocating jungle canopy at the ridgeline, and you instantly catch this massive, cooling updraft of sea breeze coming off the ocean.
The temperature drops, and you are looking straight down a sheer cliff at electric blue water crashing against the rocks far below. The physical exhaustion is completely erased by the sheer scale and beauty of the view.
And we touched on this earlier with the food logistics, but the contrast in dining experiences follows the exact same rule.
Right. It's fascinating how the traditional luxury product actually delivers a demonstrably worse experience than the budget local product.
The $50 beachfront resort BBQ gives you rubbery, overcooked squid that was frozen 2 weeks ago, and you eat it sitting next to an arguing family from Europe.
But the authentic superior experience is walking to the local fisherman's beach at dusk with 40 ringgit in your pocket and eating a line-caught red snapper smothered in sambal sauce cooked by the fisherman's wife.
It proves a fundamental thesis of modern travel. Money alone does not buy authenticity or quality in these environments. Deep knowledge, precise timing, and geographical location do.
Exactly. So with all these complex systems laid bare on the table, the failing electrical grid, the monopolistic boat cartels, the critical importance of the secret seasons, the chemical degradation of the shoreline reefs, and the specific access hacks needed to find the magic, it is time to synthesize everything.
We need to answer the ultimate question. Looking at the data, the Perhensions have essentially hollowed out the middle of the travel market. It punishes certain demographics and heavily rewards others. So who is this destination actually for, and who should actively look elsewhere?
Let's run the matrix based purely on the 2026 ground reports. If you are a survivalist or a strict budget backpacker, the verdict is a definitive mathematical NO. The economics simply do not function for that profile anymore.
Let's look at the math. A strict budget traveler might allocate a maximum of 120 ringgit a day for total survival.
But when an 80 ringgit unair-conditioned dorm bed is combined with the inescapable 50 ringgit daily forced water taxi fares just to move between beaches,
your entire daily budget is utterly destroyed before you have purchased a single bottle of water or a bowl of rice. You are paying European hostel prices for third-world plumbing and daily power outages. The value proposition is dead. So if you're on a shoestring budget, skip it entirely. What about the other extreme? The luxury traveler.
Surprisingly, the verdict for the true luxury traveler is also NO. Why? If you have endless capital, shouldn't you be able to buy your way out of the friction?
Because the infrastructure to support true luxury does not exist on the island, regardless of what the marketing says. Paying 1,200 ringgit a night for a premium resort that still features stained bathroom grout, relies on mediocre, mass-catered frozen buffets, and possesses absolutely zero high-end hospitality service culture is a terrible deployment of capital.
The staff are overworked, the power grid still fails, and the sandflies still bite you. If you want genuine frictionless luxury in Malaysia, you go to Langkawi instead.
Langkawi has robust, paved infrastructure, an actual refined spa culture, high-end culinary supply chains, and internationally recognized hospitality standards.
Okay, so if it crushes the backpacker and rips off the luxury traveler who is the Perhention experience actually built for, what about the comfort traveler, the highly prepared mid-range?
The verdict is yes, conditionally. This is the sweet spot. If you have a flexible budget of around 300 to 400 ringgit a day, and this is the strict unyielding condition, you possess the foresight to book a frontline, verified sea view chalet on Bizarre 6 months in advance.
At that specific budgetary and planning intersection, the island works. You get functioning AC because you booked a resort with a private generator.
And crucially, you have the capital to afford the private, early morning boat charters required to reach the living, deep water reefs and bypass the crowds.
Okay, what about families, parents traveling with young children?
The verdict is yes, but heavily restricted to Perhention Bizarre. Bizarre offers the wider, gently sloping beaches, calmer water for swimming, and it completely lacks the 3 a.m. acoustic warfare of the fire show base tracks on Kessel.
The food options are safer and more predictable for children, but there's a massive hard caveat regarding the medical reality we discussed.
Right. You are a 45-minute spine-jarring emergency speedboat ride away from a hospital, assuming the weather even allows a boat to launch. Families absolutely must carry comprehensive medical evacuation insurance.
And logistically, the sources scream this warning. Do not bring a stroller. The total lack of concrete paths and the deep sand makes wheeled transport completely useless. You will end up carrying the child and the stroller simultaneously.
And finally, the demographic that exploded post-pandemic, the digital nomads, the remote workers looking to code from a hammock.
The verdict is a resounding NO if your goal is actual connectivity. It will actively damage your professional reputation. Fiber optic internet does not exist. The cell networks are easily congested, and the daily grid failures knock the routers offline constantly.
You cannot look a client in the eye on a Zoom call and explain you missed a critical deadline because of the cack monkey chewed through a vital power cable, or the diesel barge was delayed by a storm.
But, and here's the environmental friction, if your goal is a forced, deep, offline detox,
then it might be the perfect destination. If you leave the laptop on the mainland and use the infrastructure failure to mandate a digital disconnect, the lack of Wi-Fi by the beach becomes a feature, not a bug.
So, synthesizing this matrix, the hollowing out of the middle is complete. The destination only rewards the highly prepared, well-funded, mid-range traveler who knows exactly which month to go, which traps to avoid, and how to verify satellite data before booking.
If you do not fit that highly specific profile, our sources heavily suggest you pivot to alternatives.
And those alternatives offer much better alignment with specific travel goals.
Yeah, let's talk about the backup plans. If you are that backpacker and you want that rugged, authentic, budget-friendly island vibe, without the massive financial friction, the sources point directly to Taman Island further south in Malaysia.
It is currently the superior value choice. It has a larger footprint. It actually has basic paved roads and scooter rentals, so you aren't held hostage by a boat cartel, and you can still secure a basic functioning chalet for 100 ringgit.
It completely bypasses the concentrated infrastructure dysfunction of the Perhensions.
And if your priority is world-class, diverse food, and high walkability, you cross the border and go to Koh Lipe in Thailand. It delivers the exact vibrant, walkable island energy that the Perhensions possessed 10 years ago.
The room costs in Koh Lipe might be slightly higher up front, but the daily living costs, the street food, the logistics are significantly lower, and crucially, because it's a flatter island with better municipal investment, the power grid actually works.
What a profound journey this has been. We started with this pristine, heavily filtered, two-dimensional marketing image of a $20 a day paradise.
And we completely unpacked the gritty, deeply nuanced, surprisingly expensive, and structurally fragile reality of visiting in 2026. From the spinal impact physics of the boat rides and the microeconomics of water taxi cartels, to the absolute necessity of targeting secret shoulder seasons and deploying capital for private reef charters.
The Perhention Islands are undeniably breathtakingly beautiful when the sun hits the water just right, but they have evolved into a complex, unforgiving puzzle that actively punishes the unprepared traveler.
And looking at the totality of the data we just reviewed, that reality leaves us with a much broader, somewhat uncomfortable philosophical question.
Let's hear it.
If the immediate shoreline coral is dead from the chemical runoff of mass tourism, if the local electrical grid is constantly failing under the sheer weight of concrete resorts built to house us, and the quiet, pristine beaches are only quiet because they charge a heavy financial premium to access them,
Right.
does the very act of seeking out an untouched budget paradise inherently destroy the exact qualities we are traveling across the globe to find?
Wow.
Are we, as modern travelers, simply becoming consumers of a decaying illusion? And if we accept that premise, what fundamental responsibility do we bear toward the destinations and the local communities we inevitably leave behind when we pack up our bags?
That is something to genuinely chew on as you look at your next flight booking.
Yeah.
That X-ray machine we talked about at the beginning of the show, it doesn't just show the broken bones of the infrastructure. Sometimes it forces us to look at the broken bones of the very places we go to heal and escape.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the glossy narratives. Always apply rigorous critical thinking to your travel plans. And remember, in a world of outdated maps, being well-informed is the greatest luxury you can possibly pack. Catch you next time.